In today's video, we're going to cover the interview question, why are you looking to leave your current role? Now, I've covered this in the past, but I want to cover it in more depth today because it's actually one of the most important interview questions for you to get right. Not only because it makes a big difference in how you're perceived as a candidate, but also because you will be asked it in almost every single interview you do for the rest of your life. I'm going to cover 4 different things. So I'm going to cover why. Why is this asked? What are they hoping to gain? I'm going to give you things you need to avoid mentioning when you answer this question. I'm going to give you 4 great examples of how you can answer this question. That way you can pick 1 or 2 that work for you and use those. And then I'm going to give you 4 ways to answer this question that are not good that people actually frequently use. Now let's get into the why. As a corporate recruiter, I ask this question all the time because there was information I needed to get and I wanted to get it as soon as possible. So it's one of those questions you ask at the very beginning of the interview so you can determine, is this a viable candidate or not? And do I want to invest the full amount of time? Do I want to talk to this person for the full 30 minutes? Or do I want to get some information, cut it short and get out because they're not a great candidate? Now the first thing that they're trying to assess is, are the reasons you want to leave causes for concern, right? So there's a variety of things, and we're going to cover things you can't say in the next section, but there are certain things like over negativity, conflicts with boss, but a few different things that they're looking to make sure, okay, I need to make sure the candidate doesn't say this, because if they say this, this is a red flag. The next thing they are trying to determine is your urgency for leaving. Do you need to leave immediately, or are you just kicking tires, or are you somewhere in between? Most people are somewhere in between. Most people don't just interview for the fun of it. Most people don't need to leave the second and like, this is it, they need this job. Most people are somewhere in the middle, but they want to know where you're at. As a recruiter, I always wanted to know, how urgent is this for you? How much time do we have if we want to secure you as a candidate? And are you actually interested in making a move? And this is a great way to assess all those things. And the last reason I would ask this question is because I want to make sure that what we have to offer you actually meets what you were looking for in your career. So if someone tells me, Ben, I'm looking to move because I want to be able to lead people in the near future, and my role doesn't provide them that, then I go, oh, okay, well, this is a potential misalignment. So the last reason you're asking this as a recruiter is because you want to know their problems. Does my role solve their problems? Because if not, that could be a potential issue. Now let's talk about the things you can't say. The first thing you cannot say is you cannot be overly negative. That is a big no. Generally speaking, as a rule for interviewing, you always want to avoid being negative. Very rarely will you being negative in an interview help you. Most of the time, it will hurt you. It's either going to be indifferent or a negative to your candidacy. So you want to avoid that, but you can't say things like, I had a bad boss, or the team culture was bad, or I don't like my team, or you know what? I just really don't enjoy the work that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. All those things are negative because they're going to think you might be the problem. Maybe you're the person who's a problem in the culture. Saying you don't like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. There might be some overlap in the position. There probably is. So for all of those reasons, you want to avoid being negative. That's the first thing you need to do. Next, you can't say pay. You don't ever want to say, well, I'm leaving because I don't think I'm compensated fairly. Now hold up, because some of you are probably going, well, Ben, that's a valid reason for leaving. Yes, you are right. But both of these things can be right. It can be a valid reason for leaving, but it also might not be a good way to answer this interview question because you want to land the job, right? You don't just want to say the most honest thing that pops into your head. If you were interviewing, it's because you want to land the job. So just because that's true doesn't mean you should say it. They don't like hearing this because if you'll leave your job for more money, you'll leave their job for more money, or you'll accept their job, then your old job will give you a counter offer and they'll say, Ben, please, we don't want you to leave. If you stay, we'll match that offer, and then you don't leave. Believe me, it is valid to want to be paid fairly, so true, but it is never the preferred answer to any question involving your motivation to leave a job or accept a new job. So 1, don't mention pay. Now, the next thing you want to avoid saying in this answer is you don't want to come off as so desperate. If you are incredibly desperate, what that does is 1, it makes them think, okay, what is wrong with this person that makes them so desperate and so open about sharing how they're in a really tough spot? That seems weird. It also erodes your leverage, right? If you hope to negotiate at all, if you want to get an offer, you want to say, actually, I'm going to need 10% more or whatever it is, you're going to erode your ability to do that if you come off as incredibly desperate, because what they think is Ben really wants this job and he's really trying to leave his next job. We don't need to give him the top end of his salary request. If we give him the bottom end of his salary request, he'll probably accept. That sounds harsh, but that does happen sometimes. So one of the other things you need to do is not appear so desperate that it erodes your leverage. Now, don't go the other way too. One of the other things sometimes candidates do is they go, I'm actually not looking for a job at all. I'm perfectly happy in my current job and I have no desire to leave. And they do this because they want to establish leverage. They want to be able to play hardball when it gets to the 12th hour and get a higher salary. But you don't want to go so far the other way, right? You don't want to be overly desperate, but you also don't want to make it seem like you don't want a job, because if you pretend or you posture to the point where they think you do not want their job, they may not want to offer you the job, because the reality is every hiring manager, every HR person, every recruiter wants to hire someone who is motivated to accept their job. So like in most things, balance is appropriate. Don't act like you are incredibly desperate, and also don't act like you don't want their job at all for the sake of posturing. You need to be in the middle. And now I'm going to give you 4 good examples and 4 different ways to answer this question. Now, the first one I want to talk about is financial uncertainty. So if they ask you, Ben, why are you looking to leave your job? No one will ever judge you if it's because of financial hardships that your company is going through. You can say like, well, we recently went through a merger and acquisition, and there have been talks of there being layoffs. My boss has been pretty open about the fact that there are some redundancies in the company, and they don't know what's going to happen over the course of the next 3 months. So because of that, I'm looking to make a move. I was actually quite happy with my team, my company, the culture, but I'm just not sure where my job will be and how certain my future will be with my company since this merger acquisition. Or there could be a downturn in the economy. But you get what I'm saying? That is not a bad reason. That's not a bad reason for looking. That's a reasonable reason. Anybody who hears that will go, yeah, I totally get that. That's a reasonable, jump off point for going and looking for a new job. One of the things you'll notice I did there was I also mentioned I was happy. I was actually very happy with my role and my team, but because of the uncertainty financially, it's caused me to start looking elsewhere. What that does is lets them know, oh, okay, Ben's only available because of this stroke of luck for us. Only because their company was involved in a merger would we be able to get this great candidate that otherwise we might not have access to. Strong way to answer this question. Now, the second good reason is you can say, I just don't see an avenue for growth in my company. So saying something like, Ben, why are you looking for a new role? Well, I'm actually really happy at my company, but one of my concerns is that I don't see an avenue for growth in my organization. So I've been in my company for a couple years. I've hit my metrics. I've hit my goals that are in front of me, but there's really no place for me to grow. And while I'd love to be able to stay in this company, I'm also interested in advancing my career. A role like the role you have posted is exactly where I'd hope to be taking my career if that opportunity was available within my own company. That's a great way to answer this question because one, you state you're happy, right? You say, I'm happy, and the only reason I'm looking is because of this, right? We've already talked about that. That's a strong way to start it off. Second, I just happen to drop in there that I'm hitting my goals, I'm exceeding my metrics. That's strong, right? I'm doing this, but there's still not a place for me to go. It's a good reason, but also lets them know that you're a top performer. And then 3, you let them know that I'm only interested in a role like the role you have. I wouldn't leave if there was growth opportunity. There isn't, and I'm specifically interested in what you have to offer. Another great way to answer this interview question. Now, the next reason you can give them is that there has been a significant change to your day-to-day, your role, your responsibility, the team. So, Ben, why are you looking for a new role? Recently my company implemented a new ERP system, and it actually has dramatically changed my day-to-day. I used to do a lot of strategic work, but now because of the systems we have in place, my role is much more siloed, and I just don't enjoy the work that I'm doing as much as I used to, which is actually quite unfortunate because I really loved my job. But now there's not an opportunity for me to do as many of the things that I used to be doing because of this change in my organization. However, that's why I'm interested in your role, because your role does represent a lot of the things that I really miss doing in the role, in the way that my role used to be a month or 2 ago. So that's why I'm looking to leave my organization and why I'm specifically interested in this role with your company. Another great way to do this, nobody's gonna fault you if there's some dramatic change that you weren't expecting to your organization, to your role, to your team, and now, you have an opportunity to maybe go do exactly what you like doing somewhere else. Just be careful to not be overly negative. I'm always positive in these answers because it always behooves you to come off as a positive person. So another good answer, just make sure you're positive. Now, the last one is interesting, and it only works if they reach out to you. So if a recruiter reaches out to you and says, Ben, are you interested in taking a conversation? Then you can use this answer, and I call this this is the positioning answer. It's the I'm not really interested role. So they say, hey, Ben, why are you interested in a new role? And you go, actually, it's funny you say that. I'm not interested in looking for a new role. I actually wasn't looking, but your recruiter reached out to me, and normally I would have said no. but I really respect your organization. And so I said, okay, well, I'll entertain the conversation just because I've always valued what you do and your place in the market. They sent me the job description, and reading through it, I got really excited because that's exactly what I want to be doing with my career, and I view it as the next step. So I'm actually really happy. And I wasn't looking, when I woke up that day, not looking for a new role, but I've always respected your organization. This role is exactly what I wanted to be doing, and I figured at this point in my career, I would be foolish not to at least have the conversation. That is another great way to answer this question. It also sets you into a position of strength for negotiation. So if you are interested in doing that, I think that's a great way to approach it. I will actually put some of this in the description box. That way you can look and reference these 4 different ways to answer it, because I feel like they're really solid. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to give you things you cannot say. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but these are bad examples. So the first one, I don't feel I am paid fairly. That is a bad answer. Remember, if you are willing to move for money, you're willing to stay for money, or you're willing to move again for money. It might be true, but nobody wants to hear it. And at the end of the day, you want to tell them things they want to hear. You also don't want to say, this is another bad one, my company culture is toxic. The reason why, and it's true, like you might have a toxic company culture, and if that's the case, good for you for looking for a new job. You absolutely should. Life is too short to not do it. But you don't want to say that, because some of the time what they end up thinking is maybe Ben was a problem. People who tend to be, complaining about things, they're often viewed as part of the problem and not part of the solution, and you just don't want them thinking that. So even if your company culture is toxic, use one of the above examples I gave you, because they're all much better. The next thing you don't want to say is you don't want to say, well, my boss is a micromanager and that's why I'm looking. Because think about it. Your boss might be a micromanager, but they don't know that, right? They just know what you're saying. And if someone says to me, my boss is a micromanager, 2 things pop into my head. Well, that's really unfortunate if it's true. The second thing is, well, what are you doing that causes your boss to feel like it's necessary to micromanage you? And it might not be your fault, but you also have to understand they might think that. So don't use that one. That is not a good example. The last terrible one, and people do say this, and I always go, wow, why would you say it like that? Is people go, well, I just feel like it's time for a change. That is not a good reason to completely disrupt your career and go elsewhere. You might feel like, you know what? I just need time for a change. But most people, there needs to be a reason why they're willing to leave, or they want to leave, they're attracted to something, they need to get away from something, whatever. Do not do that. There are better ways to phrase it. There are better ways to position yourself. Don't say you're looking just for the sake of looking. Use one of the above reasons. That's it. That's the video. If you haven't subscribed and you are still here, gosh, it just makes sense to do it, right? You watched 13 minutes in this video. Trust me, if you like this, I have more like this already on the channel, but more coming. I release 3 videos a week, all designed to help you become the best candidate possible. Good luck in your next interview. You got this.